Okay, call to order the Planning Commission work session for June 12th, 2024. And I'm going to hand it off to our esteemed group up here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here on a Thursday. I know it's might throw off your week a little bit to have Planning Commission on a Thursday, but thanks for coming to our comprehensive plan work session today. This is the fourth of 5 work sessions. I know we've got a couple new commissioners coming in the middle of the process. So with us we have the Berkeley Group, who's our consultant helping us with the plan. Catherine Redfern is the project manager, and this is Steph, and I don't know Steph's last name. Okay. Welcome. So I'm just going to hand it over to Catherine. She's going to talk about just a brief review of where we are in the process, and then jump into the growth and character and infrastructure and facilities chapters.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so I know it's been a while since some of us have been together, and we got 2 new faces. So just to reintroduce myself, my name is Catherine Redfern, Principal Planner with the Berkeley Group. And Steph Mathena, she is filling in for Benjamin Tripp, who you all who've been attending these meetings. Remember, he's on vacation this week. So Steph's going to be my note taker and helper this afternoon. But we are going to do a brief review of comprehensive planning, kind of its purpose. It won't be lengthy. It's just to make sure we're all kind of have the same foundation to start this meeting with. We'll review the schedule and progress update, kind of where we are in Lynchburg's comprehensive plan update process, and then we'll spend most of our time on reviewing the policy content of the land use and infrastructure chapters. And that conversation will take the same form that our other work sessions have taken, where we will be reviewing essentially the policy content of the chapters, the documents that you all received in your packets. So we'll be looking for consensus on the goal statements, objective statements, and strategies that are included in that document.
But if we're going to be spending most time on infrastructure, we spend equal amount of time on the city growth and character.
Land use and infrastructure, both chapters, equal amount of time, but most of the time on chapters, not overview. Yep. Okay. So let's jump into what a comprehensive plan is. So a comprehensive plan it's really one of the most important planning documents that a municipality in Virginia has at its disposal to help shape the future of a community, right? I like to think of it as a roadmap for the community's future. It is an official, adopted public policy document that sets long-range policy direction for just about everything in a community, but most importantly, land use, transportation, infrastructure, and housing, among other things. The plan should describe the future vision for the community, so where we want to be in the long term. We're talking 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And it serves as a decision-making guide for you all, for the Planning Commission, for city staff, and for the city council to help you all reach that vision. Now, that said, it is not regulation, at least not the way your zoning and subdivision ordinances are regulation, but it should provide the foundation for those documents. It should provide the framework for your regulatory tools. And that's to ensure that these tools are coordinated, right? So that you're making efficient decisions, you're making fiscally responsible decisions, and that you're making decisions that aren't arbitrary. So say, for instance, you get a rezoning application before you. You're going to be looking at the comprehensive plan to inform your decision-making process to make sure that it's consistent with the plan, the vision that the community has set, and then that the ordinances then work with the document itself. It is also, perhaps most importantly, it's a legally required document. The state of Virginia sets out each municipality's authority to adopt a comprehensive plan. It says that every municipality, whether they're a city, town, or county in Virginia, has to adopt a comprehensive plan, and then it sets out the process by which one does so. And then it also says how frequently that document has to be reviewed. So in Virginia, it says every 5 years, you should be going back and looking at your comprehensive plan with an eye to updating it, though you don't have to update it. But really best practice is that you're looking at this document annually to allow for any course correction or changes or any updates to the document that you might like to see. So that said, what does the comprehensive plan do? In a lot of ways, the process of updating the plan is almost as important as the final document itself, because you'll recall that the process that we started with was basically an outreach to the community to say, hey, what do we have here in Lynchburg today, and where do we want to be down the road? So it brings the community together, it brings city officials together, it brings city staff together to ask these questions. What do we have here now, and where do we want to be? And then provides us this structured format to make some informed decisions, say, to set the direction for the future of the city, and then set the direction for future decision-making for the city. And then perhaps most importantly, it then identifies this last little circle here, some implementation strategies. So the specific ways, the step-by-step directions, so to speak, for how we're going to get from point A to point B. What does the plan address? The name kind of gives it away. It is comprehensive. It addresses just about everything that goes into making the places that we call home. Now, the backbone of most comprehensive plans, particularly in Virginia, are transportation and land use. And the Code of Virginia mandates a lot of the other content that goes into comprehensive plans, but that's not to say that these are one-size-fit-all documents, right? These are community plans, and they should be developed to reflect the needs, opportunities, and priorities of the communities for which they are drafted. And part of the update process, as I said, was a pretty robust outreach process to the community, some hands-on workshops with the community, surveys, focus groups with industry leaders and experts, interviews with city staff, and then workshops, of course, with city officials to make sure that the direction of the plan, the content of the plan reflects what Lynchburg needs now and into the future. So this is just a diagrammatic representation of the parts of a comprehensive plan, kind of what goes into this policy document. And if you're looking at it at the top, it's kind of more general and then gets more specific as it goes down towards the implementation plan. So chapters 1 and 2 of the plan, and we'll see an outline of the plan in just a minute, lay out the vision for the city, so where we want to be in that 10, 15, 20-year time frame, as well as sets out some planning priorities. Chapters 3 and 5 are the policy chapters that we've been workshopping together over the last handful of work sessions. These include the goals and objective statements, and then the specific strategies that support those goals and goal and objective statements for kind of where we want to be, where we're trying to get to. And then the final chapter is the implementation plan, which is yet to be drafted, but is essentially the work plan. It takes all of those strategies, all those specific projects, and puts them into a matrix that says, okay, this is what we've agreed through our work sessions. We've agreed that this is what we want to be doing. So how are we going to do it? Who's going to be involved? What's the timeline? Is this a short-term project, long-term project? Is it an ongoing project? What are the resources we have to help implement it? And what's the potential cost? So we can make some informed decisions as you're making your decisions for the city about how to prioritize these projects. And this implementation plan, like I said, it becomes the work plan for the city. And this is the part of the comp plan that you really want to be looking at annually, right? This is the checklist. Say, okay, which of these strategies did we achieve so we can check it off? Maybe which do we need to adjust to allow for some course correction or changing conditions? Or maybe are there some strategies that we need to add to this list? So it really, in that way, becomes a really dynamic, usable document for the city. Okay. So before I move on to the schedule and where we are in the drafting process, I know that was a lot of information about comp planning in a very short period of time, and you've just come off the Certified Planning Commissioners training, but are there any questions about kind of what a comp plan does before we move on? No? Okay, great. So here's the general schedule for the Lynchburg Together Comprehensive Plan update and where we are in the process. It is essentially a 3-phase update process, with phase 1 being input and data gathering, phase 2, where we are now, drafting, and then phase 3, reviewing and refining. And of course, not seen on this slide is phase 4, which is implementation, which is where you all actually use the plan and get to work. But phase one is really, it's it's about gathering information, and we did that through a variety of different avenues, which you can see on the screen. The first of which was actually conducting a diagnostic of your current comprehensive plan. So we looked at your current comprehensive plan, compared it against state code, compared it against planning best practices, and said, okay, where are the shortcomings? So where do we need to focus as we're updating the city's comprehensive plan? We also conducted a thorough community profile, so basically demographics and data analysis for the city. We conducted city department head interviews. I facilitated a part of the city council retreat, and then we conducted one-on-one interviews with all of your city council members to gather their perspective. And then most importantly, we reached out to the community at large, and we did that, you can see on the screen, through a variety of different venues to get community perspective on all of those different topics you saw listed on the screen before. And we used that information really to inform plan drafting. So community feedback, demographic data, analysis of current planning documents all inform plan drafting. And I always chuckle at this diagram because it looks like plan drafting is this teeny tiny little phase, but it's been the longest phase, right? This is where we spend the most of our time, is drafting these chapters with the help of staff, with the help of planning commission, so that we can then get to phase 3, which is reviewing and refining. And so once we have the plan fully drafted, which should be after August of this summer, we'll compile the plan and present it to the public for their review and feedback. And we do that by posting it online. We have a project website, lynchburgtogether.com. It'll be posted online, and there'll be an online comment form where folks can leave comments online about the plan. And then we'll also host an open house, an in-person open house, where we really do the same thing. We present the plan and then answer questions, take feedback from the community. Part of that process you also see here is VDOT review. So that is the Virginia Department of Transportation. Part of the state code requirements is that they review the plan to make sure that it's in keeping with all of their plans and make sure we're not, working at cross purposes. So after that is complete public house, VDOT review, we will come back to you all for that final review work session where we present the comments that we heard from the public, anything that we heard from VDOT, and sit down with you all and work through those and say, okay, which of these do we need to incorporate? Which of these do we maybe don't need to incorporate, or which can we just kind of think about for the future? After all those edits have been incorporated, we then have a finalized plan that can be ushered through your public hearing and adoption process. Any questions about that process? Where we are, where we're headed?
What's VDOT looking for? I mean, obviously traffic stuff, but they're the only state agency that reviews it prior to.
Yeah, it's called the 729 review process, and I don't have a checklist right in front of me, but there's some pretty specific requirements that they're looking for. All things that are currently in the transportation chapter that we drafted a while back, but there's some specific requirements in terms of mapping and data and needs analysis, all of which went into that chapter. You all are not a community in the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area. If you were, then you'd also have a DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality Review. So VDOT's not the only state agency that reviews, it's just for you all, it's the only one that's applicable. Any other questions? Okay. So the last slide I have before we get into the content is the plan outline. And I know many of you have seen this before, but just a review of the structure of the plan that we agreed upon. It is essentially a 6-chapter plan with appendices. Chapter 1, which has been drafted, is about the plan that lays out your authority to draft and use the comprehensive plan, as well as outlining the planning process, so the process we went through to draft the plan. Chapter 2 has not been drafted yet, but this is where we will lay out planning priorities and kind of the framework for the policy content of the plan. Chapter 3, this is where we begin with our policy content. Chapter 3 is defining and protecting community form. Topics we address in this chapter are growth and community character and housing and neighborhoods. And growth and community character and infrastructure and facilities, you'll see they're highlighted in blue. Those are the topics we're discussing today, obviously. The housing and neighborhoods component has been drafted and workshopped already. Chapter 4 is creating a more connected community framework. Mobility and connectivity or transportation has been drafted and workshopped, and then we'll be discussing infrastructure and facilities this afternoon. Chapter 5 has been fully drafted. These are elements that address improving community function. That includes economic development and investment, as well as environment and community health. And then Chapter 6 is that implementation chapter, your work plan, and it also has yet to be drafted, but we'll include that implementation matrix, your work plan, as well as some description of the other tools you have available to you to help implement the comprehensive plan.
Catherine, do we have
Yes, sir.
access to the drafted materials online anywhere?
So the previous comp plan work session draft chapters are on the Planning Commission webpage on the city website. Maybe more convenient for you guys, the same materials are in your Dropbox. There's I think we call it archive, comprehensive plan archive, where you can see the previous chapters organized by work session. So if any of the new commissioners are curious of the previous chapters, you can find those there.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, so those are available for review, and we will at our, whenever our next work session is, we will be looking at the future land use map, but we should also have the plan in its entirety available to look at together before it goes to public review. So we'll have another opportunity to look at everything together, and then of course we'll look at it after public review, excuse me, and after VDOT review. So it won't be, like I said, it won't be your last opportunity to see those chapters. There are a few appendices included in the plan, the community engagement summary, which has been drafted, and then the community profile, which is the demographics and data analysis. And I'm assuming those are also on your file share and available to you. And then we've been compiling a glossary kind of as we go along. Other questions or comments on plan structure? All right, so we'll jump into reviewing the drafted content, which is the growth and character or land use, and then the infrastructure and facilities portions of their chapters. Before I jump in, I just want to stop here on this slide and orient you all to, particularly our new commissioners, to the structure of the chapters. So each of the policy chapters that we've been reviewing include a goal statement, a series of objective statements. In this case, there are 3. And then underneath each of those objective statements, there are the strategies, so those specific actions or projects. And this is what we consider the policy content of each of the chapters, is these 3 things: goals, objectives, and strategies. And that's what we're looking to workshop with you all tonight. Obviously, there's a lot more content in these drafted chapters, but all of this content is what we consider existing conditions or explanation of key issues and opportunities, and it's all structured around these 3 objectives. So it's really the build up to the objectives and the strategies. So we won't be going through this document page by page, but that said, if you have questions about anything you read in something that is not a goal, objective, or strategy, happy to answer questions or have a discussion about that. But just for time and for expediency, we're just focusing on the policy
I
content.
just have a general question about
Yes, sir.
that and about how it's constructed. So you guys presented up there all the data you took and all the process for collecting all the data. Then you all integrated that and put that in these chapters yourselves, or is there some cut and paste from the previous comprehensive plan or the current comprehensive plan, or how does that? How do those words come about, or
Yep.
what's just generally?
I would say in general, this is all new content that we have drafted. It's been closely workshopped with city staff. There are some components that have been pulled over from the existing comprehensive plan, but because of the age on that plan, it's mostly new content. Other questions? Okay. All right, so then the way this is going to work is I'll obviously able to read along in your packets. The policy content for infrastructure and facilities starts on what is listed as page 87. It looks like this in your document. But all of these strategies and objectives will be listed on the screen. We'll present them. If you have edits or questions about them, we can have that discussion, and staff will be taking notes so that we can make sure we incorporate all of your edits after the fact. So the goal statement for infrastructure and facilities reads, modernize and expand Lynchburg's critical infrastructure, facilities, and services to support economic growth, community health, and city resilience. It's on my document, it's listed as page 87.
It's PDF page 15.
There you go, thank you.
15 in the PDF is on my screen.
I've got these in sections. Mine's on 74.
So I was just gonna say, you won't see it in this slide form, but the content.
It looks like this.
Is,
Similar but different.
I guess I'm going, on the Dropbox?
yeah, is it the right chapter?
I think so.
Infrastructure and facilities.
So it starts here, so it's like page 73.
And you said we should see it on what?
This says 87 to me.
Oh, so she's saying the objectives start towards the end of the chapter on 87.
Yeah, you're coming through the rest.
Yeah, so we've just put the goals and objectives and strategies into PowerPoint format, because otherwise you won't be able to read them up there.
Or are we going to move forward?
We're going to move forward from here.
There's definitely things that I think we need to.
Yeah, and absolutely, like I said, we're gonna focus first on the policy statements, and then if we have questions or discussion about other content in the chapter, happy to move backwards from there. Okay, so edits or questions about the goal statement for infrastructure and facilities? Okay. All right, then,
I
yes,
just
sir.
have a general question, sorry, for Rachel. Does the city have a review of these before they get publicized in this format? I mean, does the city go through and look through and say, hey, we think these are achievable, or has that already been done, or?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
staff does review it, and they're, like, as just mentioned, with your previous question, it's based on what, not only public input, but also input from the departments.
Okay.
But so, yeah, they've kind of synthesized what they heard
Okay.
and
All right.
distilled it.
Yeah.
It has been a while, so I'm not saying that
Yeah.
something couldn't change,
Sure.
in the final form, but yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. Any planning process like this, there's a long time between the start and the end of the process, right? And so things change, new data becomes available. So that's why we review these chapters individually, and then we come back and we review it as a whole, because again, conditions might change. So there's always room for incorporating new or different information. Okay, so under infrastructure and the infrastructure and facilities goal, we have 3 objectives. Objective 1, and I'll go through all of them, and then we can have a conversation, is ensure all neighborhoods have access to upgraded infrastructure, facilities, and educational resources. Objective 2 has to do with infrastructure, specifically modernizing emergency response, water and sewer systems, stormwater systems for long-term resilience. And then objective 3 is to strengthen Lynchburg's downtown and community assets to support economic vitality and cultural enrichment and inclusivity. Comments or questions on the objectives before we dive into specific projects? And the question is always, is there an objective we're missing? Is there something that's not on this list?
If you guys had to add an objective, what would be an objective you would add?
That's my question for you.
I'm just asking. Yeah.
So they feel like the
You don't-
three objectives,
Yeah.
which of course are then broken down into specific strategies. But starting with the big picture of the goal, they feel like, and we feel like these are the objectives to get us there. But if there's something you feel like is not being addressed, then it's a good time to discuss it.
And we'll go through the strategies for each of these, and something may come up. So I'll pop over to the next slide. So this first objective has quite a few strategies underneath of it, and I'm not going to read all of them. But again, this is about infrastructure in neighborhoods, community facilities, educational resources. So the services that are provided to neighborhoods of the city, kind of beyond water and sewer and infrastructure services. So it includes strategy number 1 includes reviewing community feedback and demographic data to identify any gaps in services, updating maintenance schedules for existing facilities to ensure that they remain accessible and functional, funding to the school system for physical and staffing needs as well as technology needs, and then joint use agreements between schools for recreational and educational uses outside of traditional schools. So I'll pause here and let you all read those. If you have any comments or questions, we can discuss them before moving on.
Can I assume the Lynchburg City Schools, being superintendent, has been involved in this phase here? There with you, of course, a lot of this is pertaining to schools. That's your big ticket item as far as expenditure for the city, and trying to get, going back to your meeting, I guess 2 years ago, that was kind of when we headed over at Miller Park, was the interactive meeting was, a big part of it was education was in that interactive, when it kept floating to the top as more people were more concerned about public education and crime in the city, doing that discussion there. But so
Sorry.
the schools are
It
heavily
was
involved in each, especially this phase right here.
So education was definitely a recurring theme throughout the public engagement. And there has been some very recent turnover with the leadership at LCS.
Yes.
So, the folks that we talked to when we started this process are not necessarily the ones who are going to be, they're going forward. So we will definitely be running this back through them. Of course, they're coming in fresh and doing a lot with their own
Yes.
their own work, but yeah, we will be coordinating with them to make sure this is all still relevant, and they don't see any red flags or
Because that's so important to our city, and of course the entire staff is basically turning over the first day of July.
right. And you mentioned the crime being another
That was
concern
another.
there, and there are so many links between a strong education and crime prevention.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I read
Go ahead.
about the school issues, and given the constraints with money and the budget, I was wondering if it would be helpful to have some sort of incentive where we're encouraging pursuing external funding or grants to support the school system, either from the state or from other organizations.
Is that just a built-in assumption that we're making
Well,
right now?
do we need to be explicit? I don't know if we do or
Yeah, I
not.
don't know.
I mean, that's a great question, and certainly something.
Presumably that's happening. We know it's happening, but whether or not we need to explicitly encourage more of that, because the funding is always going to be the.
Well, I know when
The
they pitched
crisis.
the lottery, 'cause I was working in the legislature at the time, when they pitched the lottery, originally, all the money, of course, they always do this, it's supposed to go to education, right? Of course, now it goes to a number of other things, so technically the money should be there. I mean, you can always make an argument, come back to the localities. I don't know what the basis for the arguments would be now, since it's changed, but I think that's a good.
But our budget's always being matched by state support and other things. So how do we
I agree.
how do we emphasize
Yeah.
that matching and other sources of funding? I mean, that's what's driving our issues is money with the schools especially.
That'd be a good idea to add a point along
Yeah.
those lines.
Yeah.
Why not?
So, yeah, so I mean,
Personally.
any policy statement you want to highlight is worth creating a strategy for. So I think we can add, Steph will make a note and it'll magically become something coherent. But yeah, well, we can add a strategy or policy statement about ensuring that school funding is, or we're seeking matching funding for school support.
And external funding and,
Yep.
yeah.
You know, we treat this, though, I think, as if it's some kind of absolute guideline of rules that, you know, people are going to, oh, should we do this? Let's look at the comprehensive plan,
Yeah.
you know, and read it as if it's the rule book, and it's probably, you know,
Right.
maybe not. I mean, leading to one of my points, affordable housing offerings, which is always, it's ranks up there with education, public safety, you know, and you know, police or roads, you know, schools. Okay, great, affordable housing offerings. What do we mean by that? You know, and where, and how are you going to get there? And the answer is, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, so if you're going to attempt to put some kind of a definition for that in there, I would like to see one, but I just don't know if there is anything practical to put in the comprehensive plan. You know, along those lines.
But you know, some of the, like that fourth one, we did that within the past year, and I forget the school, but we met about that, whether it was Dunbar or something.
I think it should be more of
And,
that.
and that's great.
Yeah.
And having that in here, I think, really serves the purpose well of
I think it's true.
reminding us
Yeah,
that we
it
need to be
should
doing more.
part of our thinking.
Yeah.
Should
I
it be
agree.
then continue to develop, or does that, does
Yeah.
it read
Yeah.
fine as
And
is?
seek additional funding,
additional,
sources maybe?
I mean, and that got incredible
Matching.
public feedback, positive
Yeah.
support. And so,
The conversation about the park utilizing.
yeah, at nighttime, adding
Yeah.
lights, making it
Yeah, off
restrooms.
12th Street,
And that was
yeah.
at Dunbar, wasn't it?
Forest Payne, I think.
Or was it Payne?
Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, there was a place, we'd had a big discussion on that, and it was great. So, yeah, it's, sometimes we're highlighting the obvious, but it's also keeping things moving
Yeah,
forward.
I think that's a good point. Keeping things moving, you also need quick wins, right? Like things that maybe you're already doing or you have your foot in the door.
Yes, let's keep
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, so a lot of times our comprehensive plan is informing our neighborhood plans, as it should. But in this case, the neighborhood plan for Diamond Hill kind of highlighted the potential of the Dunbar schoolyard to serve as a community asset outside of school hours. So in that case, it kind of was I don't know if it's egg before the chicken or chicken before the egg. But yeah, that's a great example of,
Can CDBG funds
Oh.
be used for something like that?
yes, and they are.
I don't think there's anything wrong with patting ourselves on the shoulder if we're doing something already, continue doing it.
Great.
All right, great.
Yeah,
Everyone pat Charlotte on the back.
that's right.
All right, we've got, actually, we've got 8 more strategies under this objective. This is the next 6. So they are coordinating with school districts for after-school programs, specifically for STEM and technical education, promoting internship and apprenticeship programs through partnerships with industries and local colleges, supporting facility improvements at community colleges to increase enrollment and meet industry workforce needs, facilitating community outreach programs to raise awareness of educational and training opportunities, to continue to engage industry leaders and curriculum-focused skills needs, and then establishing dedicated spaces within existing community facilities for lifelong learning and vo-tech opportunities.
I feel like that's a silent thumbs up.
I know.
Yeah.
Do we not have that already, established spaces within schools, for example, for vocational training? I think we do. The Heritage, I think, has some of that.
I believe there are.
It'd just be
Maybe
another-
it's promote or
I don't know that we
further
need to
develop
change
or,
anything.
yeah,
I'm just
it's,
curious.
yeah.
So there are existing spaces, so it's more about promoting them or expanding them.
Yeah, that might be a better word.
To what extent we did that, we would do that, comes later, right, that's part of the implementation.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you think about comp plan is like at the 30,000 foot view. So we're getting as specific as we can from up here.
Executive flow.
Okay. Last two under this objective are partnering with the Redevelopment and Housing Authority to expand affordable housing, renovate aging housing complexes to ensure resident health and safety, and then explore new methods to educate the community on recycling and waste reduction efforts. Comments on those or additional strategies that you can think of that might fit underneath neighborhood infrastructure, services, and education?
Rachel, is there some kind of plan? I'm not advocating for them. Is there a plan where the city is going to look at, I think it's in the past, a recycling program per household?
I don't know that curbside recycling is on the table at this
Seems
point.
inefficient.
I know that refuse is probably a bigger priority right now,
I'm
just
curious.
figuring out.
I don't wanna waste time.
Yeah. I think the idea has been floated before, but it's something that the public engagement.
It did. This came out of public engagement fairly strongly, the desire for it, and understanding the limitations and being able to implement it. That's the way the strategy reads, the way it does, is exploring new methods to educate. And
The education is probably the better
Yeah.
part. 'Cause what we have now is drop stations around the city now, which probably works better because they're actually labeled plastic, paper, blah, metal, whereas opposed if you have a single can, guess what's going in the can?
Yeah.
Everything's going in the can.
Yeah.
Rachel, don't we have that now, where the individual pays for that recycling?
There are
because
private companies doing it.
Private
yeah.
company that
Mhm.
does it, because in our neighborhood, only 2 of our citizens pay and have it picked up on a weekly basis.
Yeah, so, it's not, including it in the plan is not a hard commitment for us. It doesn't mean we have to go and do curbside recycling or something like that.
I'm just curious. I
Yeah.
probably shouldn't have even brought it up, but it's education.
No, I mean,
But it probably reads correctly as is.
The comprehensive plan is, I don't want to call it a wish list, but, if you've identified a need for it and say, I don't know if this grant exists, but say there's a grant for a pilot program for curbside recycling offered through the state or someone. If we have an adopted document that says the community wants this, as opposed to us just applying for it and say, hey, we'd like to try that without any community support, that, it's a tool in our pocket to be a little more competitive on something like that. Or just an example of why you might want something in the comprehensive plan that you don't necessarily know exactly how you're going to get there. But the community said they wanted to maybe have it.
I mean, it could be something as simple as providing a list of the companies that offer curbside recycling.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people move to the city, and that's the first thing they've asked is, who do we call to pay for curbside recycling? And
An option, education,
yeah,
Yeah.
awareness.
I don't know whether, in terms of promoting private businesses, how that works, but if you included everyone, maybe it's okay. I don't know.
Or it could be just, making sure that people have access to a drop location without having to go 5 miles across town.
Yeah.
Making sure
Yes.
that we have well-distributed sites and that sort of thing that people can
Maybe
access easily.
CityLink can have like a list of, people might call CityLink and say, where can I do X?
Yeah.
And I'm probably spending way too much time on this, but just curious.
Well, it's a big deal now with the landfill closing.
Yeah, really?
okay, so it seems like we're comfortable with the way that strategy reads. We're ready to move on to the next objective. All right, so the next objective is modernizing infrastructure to support growth, improve emergency response, enhance water, sewer, and stormwater systems for long-term resilience. And again, there are a fair number of strategies underneath this objective. So we've got 4 or 6 per slide. This is the first 4 is prioritizing infrastructure improvements in the CIP that target aging water and sewer lines, especially those critical to economic development. Assessing public safety infrastructure, such as fire station upgrades, 911 center upgrades, and other emergency facilities. Mapping current infrastructure against growth forecasts to identify and prioritize specific areas for infrastructure upgrades, in this case, water and sewer. And then investing in water and sewer to support higher density mixed-use development in appropriate areas of the city. Give you a minute with those before we move on to the next set. See some head nods, people still reading.
Rachel, do our current fire and safety 911 meet standards set by the state of Virginia as far as response times? I mean, are we having a problem with that?
I believe the fire station's fully accredited, so I don't know that they're having issues. It's more of a continue to make sure we have adequate, we have adequate service, that sort of thing.
'Cause I've never heard a complaint about the 911 system in the city. Maybe someone else has, but I've never heard a complaint about it.
All the feedback I hear
Yeah.
is excellent.
It's
more,
positive.
yeah, it's this isn't to say that we're not doing something right. It's let's make sure we keep doing it.
I think for me, this focuses on the, maybe this is a different place, but one thing that we're overlooking are the people, and one of our challenges has been recruiting and keeping people in police and fire. So I don't know whether adding a little bullet addressing the people side of it, enhance or strengthen recruiting and recruitment, recruiting and
Retention.
or retention,
of
Yeah.
improving retention.
public safety personnel.
Yeah, we can definitely add a strategy to that effect.
Because that comes up periodically with council.
Does it?
that
Okay.
We're training people to go somewhere else, or we don't have the people in the first place.
Historically,
And
that has
people,
been true.
and firefighters are working overtime, for example. So
Okay.
just a short bullet on that,
Okay.
focusing on the people side of things here.
I would say you could add something similar for the school system,
Well,
the education.
Yep.
I don't know if that would be valuable or not, but
Yep.
it's the same
For sure.
philosophy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
school system's another matter too. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
serious issues.
Yeah, and that would probably fall under the previous objective, but we
Yep.
could add a similarly worded strategy.
Yeah, I like that too.
Okay.
But I think all the others are really good.
Okay, great.
It covers all the issues that we're facing.
All right, we've got 6 more under this objective. Yep. So structural upgrades at the dam to meet safety standards, modernizing the College Hill water treatment plant system, and considering expansions for future needs. Reducing areas that rely on septic systems by extending water service, or sewer service, to those areas. Expanding stormwater management programs to prevent flooding and improve water quality. Enhancing sewage treatment capacity, and again, accommodating for future growth as needed. And then finally, encouraging BMPs, or best management practices, and advanced technologies for stormwater management.
So 3 of the last 4. Extend sewer services to improve public health, reduce environmental impact, fund flows into expand stormwater management programs to prevent flooding. Okay, so the assumption here based on this last point is that, well, let me preface it this way. Do we have the capacity currently, how much capacity do we have currently to expand, people off of septic systems? Because we're also, we're doing water processing. Are we doing something for the county too?
The wastewater treatment facility does have some customers, or some capacity, I believe, to serve the county, and it does.
As far as getting bigger to handle more capacity?
used to do a lot of Bedford.
So-
We don't anymore, right?
So I know that, I can't speak on that. just because I don't know. I don't want to step on Water Resources' toes at all. You know, I know that they have looked heavily at all of the unsewered areas in the city, and they have sort of, I don't want to call it priorities, but I mean, they have kind of mapped out what it would take to get to those areas.
So I'm not
So,
trying to throw shade on you.
No, no,
I'm
yeah.
curious,
It's a
do we
valid
have the
question.
capacity to expand to do
Well,
this?
The other thing with that, because I live in a neighborhood where they're doing this, is when they put that in, they're not expecting 100% turnover to the city sewer. They want to have it available to the residents.
So are we at 70% capacity now? Are we at 100% capacity now? Because if we're at 90% capacity, we don't, and we don't have the real estate to expand, you know, and the money to build on to process facilities. Are we going to cut back to the, I mean, there's answers to this. That have
well,
to be
so it's an enterprise fund, so the more customers they get, the more money they have to expand their own facilities.
Is any of that federal or state? I would imagine DEQ. you know,
Federal or
does
state.
Water come, do we get money for water processing and upgrades from the feds
Yeah,
or the state?
I'm really, not to my knowledge, but that doesn't mean we
It's
don't.
fairly expensive.
So my assumption, and I'd hate to assume, but they are very good at what they do at Water Resources in terms of planning and capacity. My bet is that as part of the expansion, that basically plan they have to reach the unsewered areas, the capacity is absolutely considered with
So these
those.
3 points were considered as part of a dialogue with the Water Resources?
They reviewed this chapter,
Okay.
is that correct, Rachel?
I think this came directly from their. I mean, they gave us a lot when
Came
we
from
started.
their plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm curious, the very first point there, you know, one of the things that I've seen in the news and I think is a concern is the watershed area around Peddler Reservoir. And there's been talk of timbering or lumbering that area. You know, what do we do to protect the watershed around that? I know the dam's important, but also trying to protect the lake from silting and things like that. Is that something that we should?
I think that's something that we can mark as a follow-up. I don't know that I could draft the objective here
'Cause it's
because I know that
national
Water
forest.
Resources has been involved.
Heavily regulated federally.
And they've been involved in that conversation
Yeah.
regarding the timbering around the dam.
I think that'd be
So
something interesting to.
we could, yeah.
Yeah, we'll mark it as a follow-up. I think the environment chapter also addressed issues along those lines, and it's been a while. We'll need to go back
Right.
and make sure that if it's not addressed there, that it's addressed here or wherever we feel it's most appropriate to address it.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've heard of any kind of problem with the dam there as far as you shoring the dam up. And then, of course, to Tom's point there, Bedford County was the largest buyer of water from the city of Lynchburg 6 years ago until they moved with their own, towards the forest area. We lost a big source of revenue. Is that right, Rachel?
With
When
Patrick
we
County?
were selling water to
Bedford.
Bedford County.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was a big source of income for the city of Lynchburg 6 years ago.
Well, so, I mean, that's an enterprise fund as well, so I'm not sure that would impact like the overall city bottom line as much as like the Water Resources enterprise fund for water. But I think we can follow up with them.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll make a note to follow up about that. Other questions or comments and strategies under this objective? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the last objective for infrastructure and facilities, which is about downtown and community assets to support economic vitality and cultural enrichment. And these, again, we've got, I think, about 12 strategies to work through. The first of these, continue to implement the Downtown 2040 plan to make downtown vibrant and attractive center. Develop partnerships with local arts organizations for public arts and cultural programming. attract co-working spaces and live-work units to bring knowledge workers to the downtown area, host regular community events and festivals to strengthen its identity as a cultural hub, partner with healthcare institutions to expand healthcare services and related industries, and then support healthcare-related workforce programs through partnerships with local colleges.
So I'm going to submit, we maybe edit the objective
Okay,
language.
absolutely.
While speaking in terms of a dictionary, the word inclusivity is pretty benign. It tends to have a lot of very highly charged meanings today, and I think we all know what I mean by that. If it might be better to replace that with something like cultural enrichment and citizen engagement, participation, involvement. Because that seems to suggest other things that a lot of people in this town would consider maybe not so savory.
Okay, so the suggestion is to change the end of that sentence to
Yeah,
community
strike that last
engagement
word,
and, what
yeah,
did you say, community engagement and
Maybe citizen engagement,
citizen-
participation. or involvement.
participation? Reactions from other commissioners?
Because we want to strengthen that, right? We want to strengthen citizen involvement and engagement and participation. Inclusivity is great, but what's more inclusive than having citizen engagement, participation, and involvement? And it doesn't carry the, yeah.
I don't think, I mean, I think for some people it's a hot word, but I think
This
there's
is-
a lot of people it doesn't really,
There's
I think it's a perception for some.
And probably a substantial number of people in this city, maybe not a place like Denver or something, or New York, but here, yeah. So, anyway, maybe redefine it from inclusivity to something involving citizen participation, engagement, involvement.
We can look at the last group of strategies and then come back to that. Because the last group of strategies do actually have to do a fair bit with community outreach participation. But before we go there, any comments or questions about the strategies here? Okay. So the next 6 are developing joint initiatives in educational institution with educational institutions to promote community wellness and resilience. A centralized online portal where residents can access information on city services, infrastructure, resources. Developing a targeted communication campaign to raise awareness about available services. Utilize the monthly citywide newsletter to communicate updates and information on infrastructure projects, and then providing educational workshops on how to access benefits from the city, and then to consider expanding the Citizens Academy to provide residents with expanded views of the day-to-day workings of the city.
I might change that second one. I think we have a really good online portal,
Okay.
actually. So it might kind of similarly say continue to.
Enhance.
Yeah,
Enhance
I
or
think it's
promote.
amazing how promote, how few people ask a question and it's right there available in the portal. If people will just use, so I think it's more about promoting it, because it is really good. I think probably one of the best in the state,
I would agree. It's
you
pretty
know,
good.
So change create to promote
to promote
the centralized.
decentralized.
Okay.
And I wouldn't, given that community health was listed as the second item in the overall goal, and it's appearing here after infrastructure projects, comma, healthcare, comma, and community resources. People know that's a place they can go to get more info about healthcare or
Yeah.
health
That's
resources.
absent right now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it may be, yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, because what we have right now is what, CityLink? That's
That's a pay, I think that's for paying, but if you just go to the online portal, it's pretty good.
It is.
Do you just
pretty
mean
good.
the city website?
City of Lynchburg, yeah, it's
Mhm.
a lot of information there.
City Link is the
Payment.
the newsletter, or no, City. What's it called?
CityLink is where you
Source,
pay your
City-
bill.
Is that the other?
What's the other
don't they have
city?
more there?
It's City something. City
It's all linked
Source.
there,
Yeah,
though.
is that a?
City Source is the newsletter.
Yeah.
City Source?
That's like a monthly thing that gets sent out. Is that what you mean?
Well, there's
Yeah,
the
I mean, I
Citizen
agree with Tom.
Citizen
It's pretty
First.
good.
The Citizen First
That's,
is,
I think, what I'm thinking of. Because
And-
there is a program. It's that.
yeah,
Citizen First.
and there's a form you can fill out, and there's a chat. And I've done the chat before, and I've gotten responses pretty quickly.
Are
there
these things
people
linked
responding?
together?
It's like there was some AI
Citizen
thing
First,
responding. It could be.
Link, And, I mean, are they linked or they, can you get to one from the other?
I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of integration or need for integration from Citizens First, because that's kind of like the main line when you call downstairs, or it's the chat, or you can submit a ticket online for like, I need help with something. My trash didn't get picked
So
up
if you had a
today.
splash page,
There's
there's like
a
3 bars on it. Pay a bill,
Mm-hmm.
find a city resource, who's in charge of what, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 3 colored bars or something. You click on one and it takes you to either CityLink or takes
Yeah.
you to the newsletter. or it
There's
takes you
so if you on the main page there is a tab called I Need To, and you can go in there, pay a bill, submit a request, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you know, I think continuing to let people know that that exists and it's right there.
The Tom's idea is pretty good. They put some good resources into it.
Mhm.
I think it works. I use it.
Yeah.
I mean, it works pretty well.
But this portal is good, and it's still, like, I'm doing what you just said, Rachel, and
And with those
Yeah.
bars at the
It's-
bottom.
it's not taking me,
Newsroom alerts, meetings, pay a bill, jobs,
It's-
report a,
it's the report of concern that takes me to that.
So that's for like the street light being out.
report of
or-
concern takes you to the budget and CIP.
Which
and-
doesn't,
It's not really related.
you report it, nothing
Really.
happens. That's
think-
one of the frustrations.
I think Citizens First has been, it's the online chat. I think that's where, I mean, that's where the interaction has been good. And that pops up whenever, on any of the web pages you're looking at in the
Mhm.
city website.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously we need to promote it more because we're discussing it and we're all a little bit hesitant
A
about
little
what's going
confused.
on.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Question.
yes, sir.
Tracking this on the online portal, I mean, how are we tracking over the last 4 years? Because the lady that was a spokesman for the city,
Tracking.
tracking as far as people utilizing it.
Oh.
Because when the young lady that was with the fire department became a spokesman for the city, then she moved to B&W, tall, blonde. She said it wasn't being used that much. That's been 4 years ago. Do you know how many hits we're getting on that today versus 4
On-
years ago?
Like the Citizens First portal where people can request or submit a concern. That
I assume, yeah, but she just said we
yeah.
weren't getting that number. I mean, are we tracking in a positive direction with citizens?
We could check with communications. That department has a new director, and they've actually done a lot of reorganization of that department recently. So it would be an interesting statistic maybe to see how many hits they're getting on that.
I mean, how many people are using it? If you're paying and having all this, IT
Well-
work done, how many
Well,
folks are using
I
it?
think if you promote it, and I'm just tell you, like, because I have business here and I have stuff in other counties, and it's way better than any other county I work in, and I use it
But
quite regularly, at least 2 or 3 times a week for my business.
But-
So it is usable.
Yeah, I think that
You just need to
the key
promote
thing
it.
is just like you say, Tom, promotion.
Yeah.
Promotion.
Because even looking at this chat with Citizens First, what does that mean?
Right.
About what?
Yeah, I always call the 856 city. If I have something I need done, I don't do the chat.
I know a lot of people use it.
I
mean,
I use it, and it's
their,
great.
their
you can
call
also
volume.
but you can also see someone going to the page for the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, where do I really need to go? And I do see that I need to do this, which takes you to a bunch of links. Again, promotion, and I think
Okay.
that's going to help.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's always
Evolve.
funny from a planning perspective, and everybody will have this happen if you haven't already. Like, someone will say, "What's going on right here?" And I'll say, "Go look online." And people even post online, and then someone will ask again, well, what's going on? I can't tell. That can't be in the right place. I'm like, read the address, follow the link. If you click it, it'll show you,
Yes.
But I really think it needs more promotion, so.
Yep. So for anyone.
Anyway, y'all do a good job with that,
Anyone
I think.
listening, we do have eTrack It. If you want to know what's being built
Exactly.
where, a lot of times you can just look up the address and you'll see a site plan or a building permit for something, unless it's just a demolition, and then people are disappointed because they don't know yet. But yeah, I see people posting screenshots from the eTrack It system.
All right, so that is the end of the strategies under this objective. Do we need to go back to the objective statement itself after having discussed these strategies?
I mean, if we feel like participation gets the point across, that's,
Oh,
we
you
could.
mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so we'd kind of put a
Citizen
pin in.
participation.
And engagement.
Yeah.
Because that really is kind of what we want to support, right? Strengthen. I mean, if we're talking about developing cultural city growth, then we want to strengthen community involvement.
Yep.
I mean, without that, it's just academic discussion.
Okay, so we'll adjust the end of that sentence to be community participation. And
Inclusivity and
Yes.
replace it with something more
right.
representative of what we're talking about.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to the growth and character chapter, unless there are any strategies or objectives we want to go back to.
Just one other thing, we had a little bit of discussion about the trash removal and waste removal. Is that included in another section? Or
Should that be in the second, should that be an added strategy in the second objective with the infrastructure? I heard there's also, I didn't see, but it sounds like there's also an environmental section, and I didn't know.
There is an
Yeah.
environmental chapter. What in particular is the topic that you are
Well,
looking for?
I guess I'd read or had seen somewhere, and I think we alluded to it earlier in the meeting, but I guess we're running out of space at the landfill.
Oh.
And is that,
So you're saying, should there be another strategy under a
Just,
different
uh,
objective?
yeah, just something general about planning for another,
Yeah, we can look into that. It would
Yeah.
probably be most appropriate in this chapter, but we can.
It's a short-term need there, since 2029, it's a drop dead.
They're talking about it now.
oh, really?
Yeah, that means it'll drop dead. in
Okay, I
2029.
didn't realize that close.
I think that's, to me, that's a little bit like that watershed issue,
Yeah.
which is something that is going to hit in the future, is going to be a problem. It isn't right now, but you really need to be ahead of it all the time.
4 years.
Yeah.
They overflowed some of it over to Campbell County.
Do what?
They've shifted some of the city landfill over to Campbell County.
Okay.
You got junk to carry, and they won't take it to the city, take it out to Campbell County now, and they ask you where you're from. I'm taking a couple of truckloads of stuff out there.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
a real major concern
Yeah.
for the city, isn't it?
It's a lot of cities,
It's
a
a real
Was
major
it
concern.
Campbell County?
That's what's shutting down.
lot of communities.
No, the city one
Yeah.
isn't being used.
But even if it's.
It's just a transfer station.
4 years.
No, it's the regional,
for the
it's the
current
regional
problem we
people.
have, it's still going to be a problem
4
in
years.
10 or 15 years for the next one. You know, like you've always got to be thinking about
Tax rate
that.
now. Wait till the garbage rates go up.
That'll be the next discussion after 1.24.
Okay, so we'll look into adding some language about the landfill and any specific needs there. The growth and character chapter, you will probably have noticed there's a missing component to the chapter, and that is the future land use map and the land use framework that accompanies that. That is because we want to focus on that at our next meeting. This is the backbone of the plan, and we want to make sure that we have all of the policy and written content in place before we workshop the future land use map. So our next work session together will be a little bit different. We'll be looking at a map instead of just some objective statements. But the rest of the chapter is drafted, and the goal statement for the growth and character chapter reads that Lynchburg supports future land use and development patterns that enhance quality of life, facilitate efficient public service delivery, and sustain economic vibrancy. Any edits or comments on the goal statement for
What page is
growth and
this on?
character? I'm not sure what page.
33.
33, okay.
33.
Yeah, second from the end.
There are, as I'm sure you guessed, probably 3 items in the body of the text that I would like to see discussed.
The growth and character chapter?
Yes.
Okay, sure. Let's get through. We don't have quite as many objectives
Okay.
and strategies. Let's get through those and then
Yeah.
we'll pull it up. So there are 3 objectives underneath the goal for this chapter. The first is to continue to facilitate development that is high quality and complementary to neighborhood character. The second is commit to informed, responsible, and cost-effective planning policies and initiatives. And the third is to create a resilient, efficient, and harmonious framework for future growth and investment. Comments or edits to these objectives before we look at their strategies? Okay. So the first objective just has 3 strategies underneath of it. These are to review small area plans regularly. We know the city has a lot of neighborhood plans and small area plans. To acknowledge complete initiatives, track the progress of ongoing efforts, and add any efforts that were previously unaddressed. Second is to identify neighborhoods that could benefit from additional small area planning or neighborhood planning over the life of this plan and update as needed. And then retain historic mixed-use design and walkable street grid patterns when new development or infill occurs in designated historic districts.
Are small area plans our neighborhood plans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we call them that?
Do you like that better?
That's what we use.
Oh, you mean, okay, and I thought you mean switch, what we call it every day. You want to, so small area plan can also include a corridor plan. So it's kind of a, so we have the Forest Brook Road Plan,
Right.
Wards Ferry Road Plan. So those are,
Can we just say then such as
Yeah, we can.
neighborhood
yeah.
plans
Sure.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
just
or we
corridor
could just
plans?
say neighborhood and corridor plans, because
Yeah.
that's really
Right.
the bulk of it.
Because I've
I mean,
never
that's
heard
all
of a
it.
small area plan before. And
It's
we're
like
u-
it's like the umbrella term.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
Rich said, corridor plan, neighborhood plan.
But we have a term
Yeah.
that we use all the time.
Sure. Yeah,
At
we
least
can do that.
at least reference those other 2 here.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Why'd you ask that question? Guessing.
Okay.
You thought there was a secret third type of plan
Yeah.
you didn't know about.
We've been holding out on you. Okay. The next objective is about informed, responsible, and cost-effective planning policies. And there are 6 strategies underneath this objective. They're building and should be build preservation efforts. I think I'm missing a word. That was a typo. By identifying and preserving sites, districts, and associated with historic neighborhoods. The second is utilize key design elements from the city's historic districts to inform new development, particularly along major commercial corridors and transition areas. Maintain your CLG status, and then collaborate with private individuals, businesses, and nonprofit groups to identify, preserve, and maintain Lynchburg's historic and archaeological landmarks and resources.
Okay, so on the first 2 points, build preservation and utilize key design elements. To me, they kind of address the same topic, maybe one is intended to complement the other. To me, the second bullet point is the better of the 2, to utilize key design elements from the city's historic districts to inform new development. Stop. The part before that, point before that, build preservation is by identifying and preserving sites, districts associated with historic neighborhoods. Nothing wrong with that, potentially. I guess personally, my own caution is that we need, a trigger in here where we don't get into the habit of freely using historic districts. Historic districts are great for preserving areas that are already preserved, but as far as rehabbing old places like up in Washington Street, they get ineffective because the historic district requirements require you to use original materials, original type materials. You can't do this, you can't put up this kind of fencing, you can't do this to the yard, you can't put this kind of paint on, you can't put this kind of shingle on. And it makes it prohibitively expensive to rehab these houses. What happens is it can perpetuate urban blight by simply leaving the houses as they are. And what they end up being are low-rent, multifamily units that were originally large houses and maybe would have been renovated. The reason people buy, in my view, I've been 25 years as a real estate broker, the reason people buy old houses and old buildings is one, because either it's cheaper and you turn to something else, but largely because people like old buildings. They like old houses. I live in an old house, and I really like old houses. When I walk into an old building, I look and I see what can this become. But I'm not going to walk into a building where I have to restore it to its original elements and restore it. It's just prohibitive. I want to modernize it and keep the traditional elements of it. And so I'm going on and on about this, but what I'm getting at is, yes, we want to preserve historic neighborhoods, but without being restrictive in a way that you can't fix this house unless you do X. And I'm not sure how you would address that here, but historically, people in city council or places like this, might say, well, we can fix that by simply making it a historic district. Well, you might make the matter much, much worse.
So I don't think the intent here is to say we need to.
I don't think that is the intent. I'm
to
afraid
put
it's
in
going
new
to be a
historic
collateral
districts.
damage, by making it a guideline.
But to Chuck's point, though, I would argue that, or it could be argued that this could be a tool to develop more create more historic districts.
Yes.
Because it's in the city plan, or,
Right.
Or the comprehensive plan.
I don't read it that way at all.
I agree.
Maybe we should couch it more like
Yeah,
something that says to protect our current historic districts.
yeah.
And protect that,
Or
not
maintain the
an-
character of
not
others.
not expansion and maintain. I think the second one does what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. It like builds in some
It's
of that in the
better. I
second
think
one.
the second bullet point is
But
better.
but Chuck,
Protecting-
I agree though. I mean, the historic districts, they can I would argue they could lead to a lack of accessibility for home ownership.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, make it prohibitive.
And I agree, I like the historic stuff, but at some point, you're right. I mean, we need to get in there and get these buildings renovated
You can modernize these old buildings.
constructive
with,
way.
Yeah, with new materials. And it still looks like an old building,
Yeah,
except it looks fantastic.
yeah.
And it's up to code, and it has new stuff on it.
So
Yeah.
I'm
And-
hearing strategy number 2, utilize key design elements is okay, but we're
Yeah, it's
looking
good.
to reword number 1.
Maintain the character of, the historic character of the city, without using attempts to preserve what's there in a historical way. 'Cause, does that really bring value? I've seen the argument here that it brings value to preserve something in its original form, but that's not necessarily so. What brings value is being able to use something. If you can't use it for something that you want to use it for, and I think bullet point 2 does make that point better, you preserve the design elements of it rather than the original design features of it per se.
So if we already have historic districts, and I think federal law requires you to fit and finish, that maybe we should have something about supporting that.
Yeah.
But yeah, support the existing historic,
Okay.
because I think you're right. I think there's been times I lived on Washington Street and there was a gentleman who put siding up. Some people who've been around a long time will know about this. And the city made him pull all the siding down. Totally, he had sided up. He didn't ask, he didn't jump through the hoops, but, I think that, and that's an expensive, a very costly thing for him, I'm sure it was. But I do think, there should be possibly in the future some way to support ongoing efforts to renovate houses that are in historic districts.
Yeah.
Because if not, they do become blighted because people can't afford to go back with the slate or, so maybe some way of like helping support and protect current historic districts, so that it doesn't make it seem like you're trying to expand them.
I think that's, we can definitely adjust the language in number 1 to do that. We were just saying there might also be a way to work into language about making current guidelines for historic districts more flexible to avoid
That could work, too.
the instance you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So, a couple of things. I thought we were focused on number 2. Are we good with number 1, or do we feel like number 1 needs?
I think number 2 is the good one.
I do too.
That's what I
Oh,
think.
okay.
I think number 1 is the one that there was some questions about.
I think number 2 says it better.
Because the questions, number 1, makes it sound like we might actually try to add more historic districts.
Yes, and I think some of the language in the body of this does tend to make that argument.
Well, can I throw a thought out there? Maybe over 20 years, the city might want another historic district, but to Catherine's point, and I'm a little bit rusty, but we both have backgrounds in historic preservation, so we'll probably advocate a little bit for it. Unless it's on a state register or the national register, you can be flexible. So it's up to the local government to say it has to be the original method, it has to be a certain wood.
So we have both. We have local and state and national.
Okay.
So because we're not specifying here, I think there is an argument for leaving that in, because state and national is more of an honorary designation, and it qualifies you for historic tax credits. So if people want to go out and nominate, their neighborhood or their house or whatever to get on the national register, that's something we should support them on,
Yeah,
I
I'm not
think.
saying that we should,
Right.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not suggesting we should get rid of the historic designation. Saying
Yeah.
maybe we should not encourage it for new areas, like Tom was saying, and we should support what we have, maybe create flexibility in what we do going forward.
Flexibility.
I don't think, for living in a historic district, you have for 23 years, the people I've talked to, my neighbors, have not found that there is much support for them, like to try to do the right thing. And so I think that might be something I think is important, is how do we as a community support people within historic districts as well,
Yeah.
to make that. And I think there are, if there are some things that we can move the bar on a little bit,
Okay.
especially with new building materials that are out now. I mean, the game's changing, but
I'm gonna jump in. Can we make that a separate strategy? Would everyone be okay with that? Just the support level of it, that could be a few flyers from the cities. I mean, hey, I have this building, where do I even start? What can I do? What resources are available?
Yeah.
Is that just as a separate, so it doesn't kind of get muddled in and?
Yeah.
Are you saying a separate bullet point in here?
Yeah, just about supporting,
Supporting, yeah.
through educational resources, whatever that might
And-
be.
Yeah.
And maybe,
As long as maybe it isn't added like, and also we should.
No, separate bullet, so that it doesn't get lost in it.
so I think we need to maybe, I don't know that we're going to figure out the right words here.
Yeah, probably.
And I want to be sure we have enough time to get through what we need to get to. Maybe we could, I think we're hearing your feedback. We can take that and shape this however we need to, and you'll see it again
Yep.
in its final draft form when we have all the chapters together. So we can kind of workshop this feedback we're getting and, create the new bullet as needed, or if we need to clarify kind of what we meant on number 2 or number 1, you'll see it again.
Yeah, so we'll adjust the language in number 1 to talk about flexibility, and then look into new language for what Steph just said about support and education. Okay, the last 2 strategies under this objective are continuing to market local and regional historic sites and attractions, so more of a tourism and marketing angle there, and then partner with local colleges and universities to increase opportunity. Oh, sure.
Oh, no. Is your
we
computer
get out
dying?
early.
Yeah, we're just done. And we're done.
Seems like a good time for a water
Do you
break.
want to read from here? For now? I mean, everyone has it in front of them, right? Just for the next minute or two?
Yeah, the last 2, if you're looking at yours, are
Yeah, those last 2 seem like no-brainers.
Yeah, partner with local colleges
Yeah.
and universities to research work in history, archaeology, and historic sites.
So Rachel received many times at city council, there's a ton of argument about restored districts, I think, as you were saying, the siding, the windows. I've said in a half an hour to an hour city council meeting just talking about a window frame. And that happens all the
So-
time, doesn't it, Rachel?
It does.
Too
and
often.
It tends to happen when work is done and
They
then
didn't
it
follow
was
the protocol,
they didn't
right.
they didn't get approval for it. What I will say is there is some flexibility in our materials, but you know once and it's not that everything has to be 100% to the original. There is some flexibility. It gets hard when someone has already done the work and then after the fact are trying to get approval because lots of times staff is able to kind of work with them on what might be approvable, what might be historically appropriate. But then in instances where the work has already been done, it's pretty tough.
What? Yeah, I think a lot of people have an attitude of I'll ask forgiveness rather than permission.
Yes.
So. That's something to think about for that portal we talk about. I mean, that might be one of those tabs, have a
As a
historic
resource?
home. Yeah, I think that
Okay.
a lot of times people just, they get an idea and they're like, I'm going to do this. There's
You
no
know,
guile
yeah,
in
that's
it.
where we're going, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, there's
are
not
the
intent.
historic districts outlined anywhere on a map on the?
They
We
have
do
brown
have
signs.
maps and
They're on signs.
yeah, well, there's signs. We do have maps on the website, and when people purchase a home in a historic district, they also get a letter from Eve here, our HPC secretary, just letting them know that you've bought a home in a historic district. Hopefully your real estate agent told you, but we are here to assist you with the application process. So contact us when you're ready to do some work, that sort of thing.
How we looking?
Should I pull it up on Dropbox and maybe switch to mine?
Yeah, maybe do that in case this doesn't work.
Oh, something's moving.
No, is yours gonna die too? We're cursed.
No, I thought we
do
had some
something?
input there. Okay.
That's a good sign.
I wonder if it changed the input when that died. Oh,
There you
we go.
There we go. Okay. So we were good with, thank you for the power. Okay. We were good with those last two. The final objective for growth and character is just the strategies you see on the screen. They create a resilient, efficient, and harmonious framework for future growth, and that includes reviewing the city's zoning map and amending as necessary to align with the future land use map and framework, which we'll be talking about next work session. Coordinate higher education institutions' plans and developments with the goals of this plan. Guide development away from low suitability areas as identified in the city suitability model, which is included in the draft document you all received. Continue to be an active participant with the PDC for regional planning, and then communicate with adjacent jurisdictions on planning efforts in order to avoid conflicts. So really, things that you need to be doing anyway as you go about your planning work for the city.
I think that first one, and I don't know where we would talk about it, but I think that's probably one of the things we run into in our meetings a lot is a lack of congruence with a comprehensive plan and flume in zoning.
Yep.
So
And one of
I think that
the next steps in this process, and we're still kind of adjusting the schedule, but we'll be looking at your current zoning map in order to make sure it aligns with the future land use map.
will we have a time where we can talk about that and talk about the parameters of zoning?
We're still working on the scope. There's going to be some adjustments to the scope, but there probably will be.
I know that's something Dr. Peralt has talked about doing and wanting to do for, I think,
Yeah,
years.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Tom, just out of curiosity, does that get into, because I think the flume is not, in all cases, consistent with the zoning regulations. Is that where you're going with that? Yeah, right.
So as we're drafting the future land use map and land use framework, we're considering all the policies that have been incorporated into the draft plan currently, things that we've talked about, but also zoning. And so we'll have part of that conversation at our next work session when we look at the land use map. And then kind of from there will be the jumping off point for a more thorough analysis. Okay, so that is the end of the policy content for these two chapters. We've got a little bit of time. If there are other questions or comments on content within the chapters, we can discuss. That was my cue.
You knew it was coming. Okay. I guess maybe work backwards here.
Well, can I just throw out a quick comment while he's pulling that up? The very last one, where regional localities and public facilities. To me, services is the bigger issue. So they put in a housing development just south of the city border, and we provide the emergency, the ambulance services for that. Facilities is a little bit more vague. Either add services or replace it with,
Okay.
yeah,
Sure.
or fire. You know,
Yeah.
we're responding to their needs because we're the closest provider. Facilities, I'm not sure what that means.
So like, I think it could be infrastructure
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
and also parks, because a lot of people are gonna go to the closest
Yeah,
park,
so
not
maybe broaden
necessarily.
that. Broaden
Yeah.
that. We're providing a lot of services, facilities, look, you know, bigger umbrella term there, I guess. Or a couple of examples, I'm not sure.
No, I think we can say services and infrastructure, or we'll wordsmith
Yeah.
it, but I understand your point there.
Thanks.
Okay. Standards for sustaining places, page 30. At least on my page 30.
Okay.
It's a clever design. I think we should change the colors on the bubbles. Brighter orange, I think, would be more effective in communicating the points.
Is it page 30 that with the number down at the bottom? Is that
Yeah.
what you're looking for?
There you go. Okay, standard for sustained places. Okay. Most of these, I think, plug in just fine to what we're hoping and trying to do with shaping the city's direction. Healthy community, obviously regional, responsible regionalism, okay, harmony with nature, always a plus. Livable, built environment, great. Resilient economy, yeah, everybody wants that. Okay. Bring this to point 6. Interwoven equity. Okay. As one of our standards for sustaining places. Okay. So here, I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Equality and equity are not the same thing. If we want interwoven equality, that would be a great statement. Equality is, it doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, where you've been. If you put in the same input, you should have the same opportunity to achieve the same outcomes. Equity is government intervening to create the same outcomes regardless of input. So having that as one of our main points interwoven, well, how are we going to define this?
So
Because in the real world, this is only going to affect certain people.
Yeah,
We're not buying-
I will jump in and say that these are not terms that we've come up with. These are terms that are industry standard that come
Oh,
from
I
the
know they
American
are.
Planning Association.
Yeah.
They were used.
aware.
They were used in the assessment that we did for the current comprehensive plan. They're used as the bench line, the baseline for best practices for planning. If the term is off-putting enough, we can not include the graphic, but we can't change the term because that would be changing an industry standard.
I also think within this, I think there's something else that goes in there, and I think this is a little bit different than the thing that people, because I'd imagine this has been in for quite a while, but I think like in my community, you know, being able to have services that are easily reached and impact
That's
everybody
equality.
fairly, I think that's more of what that's talking about, is like
Well-
an equity in the service, and that's what I'm
You're
thinking.
confusing equity and equality.
Well, I'm just saying, I think that's what it means, is what
Well,
I would say.
To a normal person, yes, but not in industry standards. The reason this is included as an industry standard is because this is one of the latest fashionable terms, like inclusivity. Inclusivity doesn't mean including the poor kids and the rich kids and the weak kids and the strong kids. It means something totally different than that, and I think we all know what it means. Equity has been effectively substituted in professional circles, professional organizations, and membership groups to substitute for Martin Luther King Jr.'s equality of character. Equity doesn't mean anything like that. And for those who disagree, I would just ask you flat out, all right, then how would you say interwoven equity is intended to apply? Because I know what they mean by including it as an industry standard. You know, I have a government background. I've worked in state government. I've been in real estate 25 years. I know exactly what they're talking about. And so interposing it in here into our comprehensive plan implies that everybody's in agreement that we need to level the playing field. If that were true, then we'd be buying expensive houses in Irvington Springs and putting transients to live in them and
So-
forcing everybody out there to live in low-income housing.
So here's my question for you all as the Planning Commission, as the advocates for this plan. Do we keep the graphic in, or do we take the graphic out because it's going to raise more questions than
Out.
necessary?
I say
And I'm
absolutely
asking
out.
the entire Planning
Unless you're
Commission.
going to make it equality, because it's not going to die here. It's going to come up in city council.
Yeah, I still
And I will
think-
make sure that it does.
I still think, I think it's important. I do think there are parts of our community where people are given more because they don't have anything. And so
And
then
that's
that goes
unfair.
back, that isn't, well, I think that's the nature of
It only
services
happens,
that we.
in certain neighborhoods. It does not
Yeah.
happen.
Well, I think
You do
it's-
not find Section 8 housing in
Yeah.
Carter's Grove. You
I
don't
still
find Section 8
think
housing in
it's-
Irvington Springs.
I still think it's
You're not going to find
important.
it off Wigington Road.
I still think it's important, actually, for a community to take care of people within its boundaries. So to me, I don't have a problem with it.
I know you don't, Tom, but, basically what it does is it takes, because I have friends who've been affected by this directly, who live in expensive apartments, and they have to work 2 to 3 jobs to pay that rent. They have to work 2 to 3 jobs to pay that rent. But the person next to them, the government's paying their rent for it. They can live in the exact same place, and there's an illegal alien living next to them. There's a single mom with 3 kids living on welfare in the same apartment complex in the name of equity, and the government's paying their rent. And so life choices, decisions, education, they've had to do all this, how many jobs you're working, and the equity comes along and says, we're gonna level the playing field. Or, yeah, you keep working your 3 jobs, you keep getting your education, you keep doing this, and we're gonna make it so this other person who's done none of those things gets to live in the exact same place you do and drive a car, and we're going to pay for all their kids' food.
So can we ask other people? I understand your position,
telling
it's
you,
really
this
clear.
is-
So let's ask other people, because I don't want to get
You're
off on a
cosmopolitan, Tom, and I understand that.
political
This is a
conversation, but.
political document.
Right, but I want to hear what everybody else has to say. I think that's a fair thing to do. So anybody have anything else to say? Sure.
Well, I looked up the definitions, and equity is defined ensuring everyone has access to the resources they need to succeed.
That's equality.
No,
Yes, it is. Let's look up the definition of equality.
means treating everyone the same.
Well, how's that different from what you just read?
Well, regardless of how
It's the
it's
same definition, and it's not the same word, or they'd use the same word.
regardless of how it's being applied, there's nothing wrong with that goal.
There is. Yeah, but
So-
when men try to create the goal using the power of government, it always creates unjust and hurtful outcomes.
Okay, so can we hear from others?
My feedback on it is that it didn't jump out to me like you're saying, Chuck, at the beginning. So,
Right.
I understand your points and everything, but like I said, it it didn't
It's
light a
standard
fire
industry
in me.
lingo now.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So
It is.
I think there's another lens to look at this through, and that is something that we've also heard through the public process is that there are wards within the city that feel like, especially in the annexed areas, the later annexed areas, that their expectations were unmet from those annexation promises, right? We still have neighborhoods that don't have, all the amenities that they were told they were going to get being part of a city. One of the most eye-opening things to me during the public process was someone said, why should someone in this part of town have the sidewalk with the tree lawn and, the nice, beautiful neighborhood sort of street versus, places where there are
We're
no
getting all to Section
sidewalks, no curb, that sort of thing. So, I mean, I think
It's a real
there's
discussion.
a piece there that, is it,
But there's
Is it-
politics behind a lot of that too, and there has been in this city for decades, and everybody knows it.
Well, I think what
so
she's
is it,
saying
so
is
is
there's
it fair
equity issues.
that there are disparities like that within our own
There
city?
are, and
Similar
when government
people.
tries to address them by giving one person, one group of people, the same thing that others have to work for, that is by its nature unfair and disparate.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the built environment, though. I mean, we're not giving someone
Well,
a sidewalk.
I feel like
Well,
poor
you-
Dave, who has never had sewer, he's got
Let's
septic.
draw the same parallel. If we acknowledge that there are neighborhood characteristic differences, then we have to acknowledge that there are economic and social differences. But government tries to correct one but not the other. And equity is the definition of the term they use for doing that sort of thing.
I think we simplify it. We can discuss this all night. We just vote on it, keep it or not.
Well, let me ask this question. So just control F on here. The only place equity shows up in the entire chapter is on this
Right.
thing. Is interwoven equity a definition in the glossary? I haven't seen the glossary, I'm sorry, so I don't know. Is it,
I don't believe it has been defined. This is, the term is a term that the American Planning Association uses. We can create a definition for it, one that is palatable.
It'd be easier to change the word to equality.
Yeah, I'm not asking.
Wanna do that?
Yeah. I'm not asking for that.
I think because it's the definition.
It would seem to me that if it were an industry standard term, it would reappear more frequently in the documentation, I guess. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's kind of where I'm headed with that.
Yeah, I mean, we can reference the APA planning document that it comes from as kind of the source, that it's not, there is a source behind it,
Yeah.
if that helps.
And neither is mine. You're trying to justify something that someone has a disagreement.
So APA's definition that they have is that equity is just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential.
Just is it? So what's environmental justice and social justice? What is with justice?
We're not discussing
Because
those
it falls
terms right
into
now.
the same thing. Justice is the key word there, right? Isn't it? I mean, how hard is it to change that word from equity to equality?
I wouldn't want to change AP. That's APA's.
Well, equality is even
Term.
better. I've got a statement of being equal. Statement usually an equation, one thing equal another. Conditional quality being equal, agreement in quantity or degrees compared, likeness and quality to statement usually an equation, right? Statement being equal. That's harmless.
If we're going to change it, then we just need to get rid of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think
I mean, we
Get rid of
don't
the whole thing.
have to include this section. We don't have to include this graphic. When I read it, that was my thought: is why are there areas of the city that have more than others in
Right.
terms of physical infrastructure, and not? If it becomes this thing that is conflated to something that I don't think we meant, then let's not include it.
It's easy enough to fix it just by putting equality, but it's strange that we don't want to substitute a word while at the same time insisting it doesn't mean what somebody's suggesting it means. Why not just change it to what we all know it means?
Well, just this section is based on the APA, the guidance from American Planning Association.
puts- yeah.
So if we're going to change it, then
Well, the American
it's no.
Planning Association is just an association. They can make words, they use whatever they want.
I'm just saying we're just
pulling it from
if-
that
If we're not
guidance,
referencing the APA,
Well, why don't
and
we
we're
use the American Bar Association?
because we're not writing a legal
Are we
document.
going anywhere with this? Because I don't want to continue this discussion.
Yeah, I mean,
So
if
Tom and I will
should we
continue this.
pull this out, or should we wait? It's something we have to vote on.
It's gonna be an issue, I can tell you. If it's not, it's with me, it's an issue today, but it's gonna be an issue on city council when it comes up, I can promise you. And it will be, because I'm gonna talk to them about it. So it's gonna come up again. And
So
then
I-
you'll have to discuss it with them.
Yeah, we're just looking for guidance from you all as a body.
You can raise your
Yeah, I
hand.
mean,
Raise your
Trying
hand.
to save you some trouble down the road, and it's gonna come up, and you're gonna be having this same discussion with 3 to 4 members of city council. And even if it's only one, it's gonna present
Yep.
a hassle that you don't need. Why do it? Why not just make it something everybody can agree to? Why is that hard? I don't
So-
understand that.
Planning Commission, yay, nay, keeping the graphic in or taking it out. We're not going to change the term because it's not our
It doesn't matter to
term.
me, either one. It's gonna go forward the way it's gonna go forward.
So we voting?
I guess.
Is this something we vote for?
Let's vote.
Call
So you're
vote.
saying you take the graphic out, leave the wording in the body, but take the graphic out?
Yep.
All right, that's what we'll vote on. Take the graphic out. I
Aye.
guarantee you 3 or 4 people probably won't read that deeply. So who's for taking out the graphic? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Who's
Okay.
opposed? All right, so
Okay.
take the graphic out, leave the wording in the body.
Gotcha.
please.
Okay. Were there other comments? We're just about out of time, and I want to make sure we cover next steps, just so that everyone understands expectations.
There are some other things, but I think they can pass for today.
Okay. And you
you'll-
can,
Yeah.
go, oh, sorry, Grace.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, well, you're probably going to cover it next
I
steps.
probably-
To send any edits
Yes.
to me, and we can compile them.
Yeah.
Child hours.
Oh, no. That's the
Well,
worst.
we are done. I was to say the next steps are, per usual, you can email comments to Rachel. They can be policy-based comments. They could, you caught a typo, let her know, and we will incorporate those. We do ask that those edits and comments be sent by this time next week, so that there is kind of a cutoff, that this isn't lingering. We'll incorporate those edits, and then we'll be back in August. And I don't think the August work session date is firm yet. That's my
Yeah, we were
understanding.
shooting for August 6th. I don't know if we could get a straw poll quickly. I know it's vacation season, so if that day doesn't work, let us know. Anyone seeing a conflict right now? Okay.
Okay.
Well, check your calendars, and we'll,
Include that with your comments.
yeah, we'll keep holding that. If you could confirm your attendance for August 6th, that would be
Yep.
good.
And at that work session, we'll look at the future land use map and framework. We will hopefully look at the compiled plan so that we can have some context to be reviewing the future land use map.
Is that what Tom was talking about a bit ago?
Yes. Yes, exactly. And then from there, we move into public review, and then we'll be back probably December. I think we've tentatively set a December date for our work session to look at public comments, but that's still tentative. We won't set that in stone yet. But otherwise, thank you all for your time. It was a useful conversation.
Thanks, Lee.
Do we have a motion to adjourn so we can?
Motion?
Motion.
All right.
Second.
We're done. Thank you.
Great.